Our All right, so we're going to be diving into DBT. This is week 4, Thursday. I'm going to be posting the Tuesday one today as well with this one. So that will be available for you guys to look at as well. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Like I said, we're going to use this book today, and we're really going to dive through the book and really look at ways that you'll be utilizing this for yourself or for others as well. It's a really nice book too. So if you are a mental health education director, if you are in some sort of mental health facility, I highly suggest purchasing these for like all your patients and using this in your group sessions. It's very easy for every patient to have one of these. And they can also take it with them. And the cost wouldn't be very much per patient for them to understand and learn skills that can technically help save their life. So I love DBT. It's helped me tremendously. I use it every single day. And shameless plug, I'm actually putting a boost patch on right now. These are non-pharmacological. I'm just going to go ahead and shameless plug on this situation. You can see it's called Super Patch Boost. And this is an energy patch. It's super cool. It's tactile technology. So it interacts with your skin, where we know our skin is a huge network and is always responding to our external and internal stimuli. You can kind of see that. It's see-through. It just has a couple markings on it. And you can place it anywhere on the body. So this one is an energy patch. I'm just going to place it on my arm, and you can also place it over tattoos. I like to put them on my hips, right on each side, where your pants kind of sit a little bit above it, and nothing really peels them off or anything. So this is literally the first non-pharmacological situation that can help a lot of people get off medication. They have new ones coming out this February that are going to help with blood pressure and diabetes. Like, what? So if you're interested in that, hit me up in learning more. You can also get commission off of that. So I was just thinking, like, think about how many pills we give in the hospital. If you gave patches out instead, you would make a really hefty commission. Like, if you gave 15 patches to somebody that needed 15 pills, not only would they get better, but you would also make money. So imagine making money off of every pill you gave. Wouldn't that be cool? Like in the hospital? That would be dope. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this. So this is the beginning of the book, and we're going to dive into each section today. I'm literally reviewing the book with you guys today because each section depends on what you're doing, and then also the worksheets as well are really helpful in different situations. So I'm going to give you tips and tricks on how to use this book. This is kind of a cheat sheet of all the things that are under each section. So you have mindfulness, emotional regulation, distress tolerance, and interpersonal effectiveness. So mindfulness is really where you want to start out with all your clients, because if you understand that they're aware, then you can kind of skip through that part, right? So you're kind of getting a baseline of where your client's at in regard to emotional regulation and emotional intelligence. This should be for every client. It doesn't matter if they're there for like life coaching, business coaching, whatever coaching, menopause coaching. I don't care what coaching it is. You need to find out if they're aware or not, because if they're not, then you're going to have to dive into that piece first before them understanding like what you're about to say, because a lot of it does deal with becoming aware of your body. Emotional regulation, obviously, it's what it is. Understanding your emotions and how can you move through emotions without reacting inappropriately, but responding accordingly. So if we're reacting all day long, it's probably because you're in fight or flight. So that's why we need to get down to like what's happening with your nervous system. So these are really good inventories to just go through each 4 of these with your clients when you're first talking to them, because you can pull out skills. And I love doing this. So what I'll do is I just pull this page out, and I'll be like, all right, so how do you feel about your awareness of your body? Do you notice sensations through the day? Do you notice breath? Do you notice your environment? Do you notice energies by any chance? Do you notice if you are energized or get exhausted around people? So that's kind of in the mindfulness category. When you talk about emotional regulation, you want to ask some questions such as, how do you feel about naming more than 5 emotions? Can you name more than 5 emotions? When was the last time that you noticed an emotion and named it? right? So these are some of the questions that you might want to ask your clients or your patients. And many times people don't name their emotions. Like, many times people aren't going to be like, I'm angry because you did this. If they were emotionally intelligent, they would do that. But a lot of times people are like, I just feel bad, or I'm sad, or I'm mad, but they don't say why, because they're just kind of spouting out what they think they're feeling. But if we get down to the core root of it, they're probably several tiers down a different emotion. So it's important to investigate that with them. Dis- Distress tolerance, lots of this one helps you distress from situations where your nervous system might be dysregulated. So there's different skills here to help you regulate your nervous system, whether it's the halt skill where you take care of your body, the tip skill where you express different emotion through action, whether it's like plunging your face in a cold bottle of water or running up and down a flight of stairs, to exhaustion to get that energy or emotion out, right? It's emotion for a reason. We have to move through that emotion. It also goes into behavior chain analysis, which we'll dive more into today, but that basically walks you through like, why did you do something? And I think I've hit on that before. Interpersonal effectiveness are obstacles, values, affirmations, things that we do, how we speak to ourselves and how we speak to others. So, are you able to ask somebody for what you want without coming across as like being whiny or indecisive? Are you able to speak with other people and engage in conversation with them with a back and forth? So these are some of the things that it's important to look out for when you're dealing with clients. Are they able to do those things? How do they talk to themselves? When you're in discussion with them or in conversation, every other second, are they saying how horrible of a person they are, or how they suck at this, or how they don't want to do this? So, kind of knowing these cues can really help dive into each of these sections. And that can just help really make your program or your facility or wherever you're at, it's going to make it more robust because we're now getting to people on a human level. And if they can get education and knowledge in all four of these boxes, then that's going to make them a better person and they're going to love you for that. So it's really important that we dive into these aspects. I went over this last week. This is just kind of a cheat sheet. And, it does tell you the different parts of all these acronyms here as well. So, um, give and fast. So, this is interpersonal effectiveness. This is like asking for what you want and how to get it more often. Say no and set boundaries, which is so important for nurses. And then we also have resolve conflict effectively. Many of the times, nurses are people pleasers and they don't like that interaction that might be more on the heightened end of like being on the defense. They rather just kind of get out of the situation and keep on doing what they're doing. So they're not very engaged in the art of um, like kind of standing up for themselves. Most likely, a lot of nurses are ones just to be told what to do, and they're not going to really kind of argue with the boss or with the person that's usually above them. It's just how it is in nursing. But that's changing as more and more nurses understand and realize that they can do more and more with the skills that they have beyond their nursing degree. So we have emotional regulation here. This is the vitals to success. This is a really good one as well to start off with clients. Understanding how to validate yourself, guided imagery, or imagining your success, which goes back to the law of attraction and manifestation, taking small steps and stops. Applaud yourself, lighten the load, and then sweeten the pot. And this is like doing things of mastery. So, doing things you're really good at to kind of help you along to understand like you're in the right spot. The ABCs of DBT, please, and then distress tolerance. We have the tip, stop, accepts, and improve. So these are things that are going to help you kind of get out of that moment that your body might be in heightened response. This also goes into thought modification, so radical acceptance of a situation, turning the mind to acceptance, and then non-acceptance and pain, non-acceptance and suffering. We also talk about pros and cons, half smile, willing hands, and observing the breath. And we also talk about soothing the five senses as well. All right, any questions so far?
Nope.
Perfect. All right, let me give this a chance to load here as we move through. So I talked about this last week. These are just papers that are check-ins that you can use as well for your clients. And my computer is wanting to restart so bad, but it's not doing it. All right, so the first one is mindfulness. We talked about this as being the first one to do with clients. And the DBT goals are to reduce suffering and increase happiness, increase control of your mind, experience reality as it is. So really that's really our goals as a coach anyway, because we want to help you get to a place where you can know your own worth. You can also understand that you are in control of your mind, your thoughts, and how and what you want to do with those. And then you're also trying to hold people accountable. So holding people accountable is experiencing reality as it is. So if somebody's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you can be like, hey, your current reality is like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So how does that feel for you? Right? How is your current reality really serving you? Is it serving you for the better or is it serving you for the worse? And so that's important to understand, like those three things are really kind of what coaching is about and what nursing should be about as well. All right, mindfulness skills. I've already gone over these with you guys in the previous sessions here, so you can check that out. These are also meditations. We have Wise Mind, which we've gone over. I'm just going to kind of skip through this. And these worksheets right here are walkthroughs. So this is thought diffusion, and then loving kindness. So this is just a nice way to be kind to yourself and send love to others. And then this is also just kind of diffusing thoughts that might come into your mind that aren't helpful. This is walking the middle path, just to understand that there's usually two sides to every situation. And, the only thing that doesn't change is change if you don't do anything about it. We talked about willingness and willfulness and a little bit of distress tolerance. These are the symptoms of stress. We talked about this a little bit ago when we talked about body cues. So these are things that are really important to just be aware of in your clients. If a client is experiencing any of these physical symptoms, it's related back to stress. You could also notice these, and you can go through these with people like, hey, are you experiencing any of these behavioral actions? Are you noticing? Are you socially withdrawing? Are you, grinding your teeth at night? Symptoms and consequences of long-term stress. Again, these are more diagnoses. Literally, the whole book of diagnoses is related back to this. So, really, any diagnosis is going to be related back to stress. And then unhealthy coping behaviors. You can go through these with your clients, like, hey, do you notice if you do any of these? That's important as well. All right. So, these are just kind of roadmaps. And once those people understand or learn the skills, you could make this a whole session. I mean, you could make this like 12 sessions right here and break each section down where it's 3 sections per section. So there's 4 sections. You have the mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotional regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. You can do 3 sessions per situation and go each of these skills over with people, especially if you're dealing with teens or adults. You could use this book as a coaching session in itself. So these are just little maps for people to go through. So obviously, it goes into like, are you in crisis? And then how to kind of walk through. Sometimes I feel like if you're in crisis, you're probably not going to turn to this and be like, oh, I need to, yes, I am in crisis. But it also says, do you think you'll soon be in crisis? So if I said yes, you would do pros and cons, radical acceptance, and look at that crisis and go with what you think is best. Halt skill is before engaging in any self destruction behavior, ask yourself, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? I really appreciate this one. I'm actually going to post it on LinkedIn today because I think it's really important to understand that self-destruction doesn't just come from cutting or hurting oneself in a way that we usually think. It can come from everything that I've spoken about in the previous sessions, from not eating, overeating, under exercising, over exercising, right? There's always unders and overs. You want to be kind of in the middle. So these are really good to, even for kids, like, hey, are you hungry right now? Are you angry, lonely, or tired? It's usually one of those four things, not only in kids, but in adults as well. So it's important to learn those and understand if you're in any of one of those. And if you are, what can you do about it? Right. The stop skill helps us respond instead of immediately reacting. This is another great one for teens in school and adults. So stop, take a step back, observe, and proceed mindfully. So freezing your tracks, don't move, try visualizing a red stop sign in front of you. Don't let your emotions control you. So this is a really good way to teach kids like, okay, I am in control of my emotions. I just need to stop for a minute. I need to take a step back. I need to walk away. Um, Notice how you're breathing is when you observe. So you're going to observe other people around you. Notice what you're thinking and feeling, and then think about the big picture. And then you're going to act with awareness, deciding what to do. You want to consider your thoughts and feelings in the situation and other people's thoughts and feelings. And that's a really good one for adults that might have, a little bit of needing help in the anger department or diffusing anger. Tip skills, we've gone over this before, but just a reminder, it's tipping the temperature. So you're changing the temperature. Obviously, you probably want to do like an ice bowl or something where it's going to be cold. Intense exercise might be running up and down the stairs, doing jumping jacks, push-ups, squats, moving that emotion through the body. Pace breathing is breathing in like 4 count, holding for 7, and then letting go for 8. So that's really going to slow down your nervous system. That's a golden nugget of advice. Like that's probably the best skill in here. Paired muscle relaxation is just squeezing different parts of your body and then exhaling and releasing that body part. All right. Any questions so far? Any skills that you thought might be really helpful for yourself or clients that we've gone over?
I love the breathing um there in the tips.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that that's something that's it's so helpful, and it's just you can use it anytime at all.
yeah. The pace breathing, is that what you're talking
Yes.
about, Jenny?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's available. Like, and it's not noticeable, it's not very noticeable. Whereas like if you're if you're in a situation like at work or at school, like you're not about to bust out some jumping jacks, right? Like in the middle of something. In the middle of a meeting, could you see somebody just all of a sudden being like,
Right. Right. And that's the thing, I mean, especially if you're somebody that, like, if you're freaking out, the
yeah,
average person doesn't want everybody to know that they're freaking out. So being
yes.
able to just do something nice and simple um, is is a great tip for somebody, especially somebody who's kind of not buying into uh, any of this to begin with. It's a great starter tip.
Yeah, yeah. Have you noticed people being a little bit more kind of slow moving into learning some of this stuff of like body awareness, breathing and such in your own private practice?
I think there's the people who are like really, really skeptical and really resistant, but then I ask them to humor me, just
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
hey, I know this may feel a little uncomfortable or a little out there, but let's just try it and see how it is. Um and usually they're kind of surprised that that something so simple can
Mhm.
actually help. And, I think that comes from just so many people thinking that there's got to be some big medication or, I have this diagnosis, so it's got to be something really complicated to make me feel better. And, that's not always the case.
Yeah. 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 I love how you said, yeah, I think, most people think that, yeah, there's a pill or it's complicated, there's surgery or procedure, but sometimes it is just coming back to the breath. Because as we know, like stress is directly related to breath. And yeah, so that's a really good point to make. Thank you for adding.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. So the next skill after the tips is accept. So I like to say, as nurses, it's just the tip, but as we get into accepts, this is even better. And it's this stuff that we do before tips or tip that is going to help us from stopping to even get into the tip in general altogether. So once you have enough practice, eventually you won't even need tip anymore. You might need it sometimes, but you're not going to need it as much because it's a skill that's helping you build new neural connections. So every time you respond instead of react, a new neural pathway is like, yay! They have a celebration and they reconnect. So the next time that thing happens to you, you're not going to yell and scream and throw your middle finger up. You're going to be very calmly responding because you realize that it doesn't need that much energy given to that example to or experience to get your point across, right? So just coming back to a nervous system that's regulated kind of place helps. So accepts are really good ways to understand that our whole world affects us. And so distressing emotions sometimes might feel super heavy and you're unable to get through things. And so accepts really helps distract yourself from these maybe distressing emotions that you might be having. So if you're coaching people that might have chronic suicidal ideations and things like that, this is a really good way to help them get out of the mindset. Activity. So do an activity that requires thought or concentration. So like you can clean the dishes, you can like play a board game, you can go for a walk, you can like cook your favorite meal and eat it, right? Something that's going to dive into the present moment. Contribution is when you're kind to somebody else. So even just saying nice things to the public's register person or the Kroger delivery person, whatever it is, just being kind to other people will help you move through difficult or distressing emotions. And I thought that was really cool because we're actually connecting with another human and our heart centers are connecting because our heart energy extends up to about 6 to 8 feet. So you remember during the cough, they were telling us about 6 feet to stand apart. That was disconnecting everybody's heart. And it was making us even more isolated and feeling even more lonely because our hearts weren't able to connect with other people. So I'm glad that situation's over and we're able to have our hearts connect with other people now. Comparisons. So put your situation into perspective by comparing something more painful or distressing. So maybe there's something that has happened to you in the past, and you can be like, wow, actually, this isn't as bad as that. And I got through that. So I'm going to get through this. Right. So it's just kind of reframing that mindset. Emotions, doing something to create a new emotion. So if you're feeling sad, it's not that you're discrediting feeling sad. You can say, I feel sad right now because this happened. And now I'm just going to go change my emotion. I'm going to go do something that makes me happy, or I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm just going to go outside and feel the sun, right? And try to get some emotions of joy and just gratitude into my body. Pushing away, so avoiding a painful situation or block it from your mind using a technique such as imagery. So just imagine putting like those negative thoughts in a box in a cloud and imagine it floating away. And the same with thoughts. So you're basically shifting your thoughts to something neutral. So if you're having a thought like, I really like dislike this person, notice how much energy that's taking up for you to even say that or to even focus on that person about how much hate or dislike you have for that person. And so starting with an A, you're going to name objects around you that start with each letter of the alphabet because that is going to change your energy to not focusing on that anymore and switching your mindset. And you're going to do that for a little bit, but then you're going to be like bored with that and want to do something else. So it totally gets you out of that grind mindset. Sensations, finding a safe physical place. If you need to touch something, you can use water. You can also draw. It's really diving into your five senses. So, whatever that looks like for you. This next one is really helpful. So, you can come up with your clients or your patients ways to kind of distract themselves. So, they can write down some activities. And this is why I said this book would be great for mental health facilities because they can actually take this everywhere with them. And it has all of their plans and everything in it for them then to refer back to when they leave the facility. Because a lot of times they're just given, you know, worksheets. They'll just be given like one worksheet and they usually just throw it away. They don't most likely are going to take it with them. So at least giving them something to have with them when they leave. Improve the moment is all about using the distress that you had and just improving the moment. And this can be from imagery. So accepts and improve kind of overlap a little bit. They're just different ways to move through distressing situations or changing the moment that you're currently in. So changing the meaning to the moment. You can invest in prayer or affirmations. You can relax. You can do one thing in the moment, whether it's like washing dishes, talking to somebody directly, eating an orange, just focusing on one thing in that moment. You can also go on a vacation, a literal one or one in your mind. And then also encouragement. So sometimes you just have to encourage yourself. So if the outside world is not encouraging to you, I highly suggest being like, I'm doing a good job right now. Like I'm doing the best I can with what I have and I'm going to keep going. Right. So just speaking kind words to yourself is going to be really helpful. These are some activities that go with that list. So again, if you just see this is kind of an explanation, then it dives into more and people can circle or they can check which ones that they want to try. So this just gives you a little bit more of examples. And just speaking of prayer real quick, I think sometimes we get caught up so much in nursing. I had a nursing student the other day that sent me a message and she's like, I don't know the religion of my patient and it's like asking for it in the EHR. What do I do? And I'm like, ask the patient. So it's things like this that might be very important to the patient, but we don't know unless we ask. And, I'm not like religious in a sense, but I believe we are all here for a reason. And I can definitely sit with you and pray with you or be with you. And I've had many sessions where I've prayed with patients. You can even tell them if they're like, I don't believe in God, I'm an atheist, you can be like, all right, well, do you think there's a higher power? Do you think there's angels? Do you think there's spirit guides? What do you talk to me? What do you believe? So you can just kind of open it up to curiosity as well. And then encouragement, these are another couple affirmations. We do have an affirmation sheet though that you can use. Those are just a few. This is hard, but it's temporary, is probably one of my favorite things to say. Because you can get through it. Like, look at your life. You're obviously been through so much so far and you're still here. So let's keep on trucking here. So half smiling, willing hands. This is kind of like a little bit of a smirk on the face. Like I think of it just like think of something and like allow your face to smile. Right. That's kind of what the half smiling is. Willing hands is just open hands. You can place your hands like open up on a table. You can open them to the sides of you. This is just allowing you to be more open to receiving. So allowing you to check in and notice your body language. So when we have our hands open and they're not like clenched like fists, people are going to be more apt to talk with you or approach you, right? If you're like standing there like or like I can't even do it because it's not even me. But if you're like people aren't going to approach you. But if you're like, hey, how's it going? People are gonna be like, yeah, it's not going. And you're gonna be like, what's going on? Right. So, it's just opening the hands is really important, either to the sides of you, relaxing the shoulders down and away from the ears. Pull them down, unclench your jaw, unclench your hands, unclench your ass, because that's part of it too. Notice throughout the day how many times you clench that. I tell you, it's a thing. There's been times when I'm driving in Atlanta traffic and I will clench pretty hard. Um, so when to practice, it just says like when you wake up in the morning, throughout the day, when you're feeling down or angry or frustrated, those are really good times to practice that. The next one is radical acceptance, and I'll briefly go into this. So radical acceptance is letting go of the illusion of control. So it's kind of like going with the flow or being open to receiving and also surrendering. So many of these skills kind of mirror manifestation, vision skills, affirmation, and really the laws of the universe, which is really fabulous. So it rests on letting go of the illusion of control and willingness to notice and accept things as they are right now without judging. And that's exactly the quote from Marsha Linehan, who created DBT. And so I love this because it really helps you understand like you can put as much energy as you want into being upset about something that might be happening in the future, but it hasn't even happened yet. So why are you giving energy to that? So if we come to the willingness in accepting things as they are in the present moment, then we can handle that emotion and we're not projecting into the future or bringing from the past. So the facts of the reality as it is, the past and the present, and then why accept reality? To change our reality, we have to accept it first, right? And this kind of goes back to AA. This is another um the 12 steps kind of mirrors DBT as well. So a lot of different skill sets can be found in other resources that we do help patients or clients with. Remember that radical acceptance is not approval, compassion, love, passivity, or resistance to change. It's just kind of standing in the moment, just being like, yeah, this is what it is. And so you can walk through clients with this to understand what do they need to radically accept. So what's bothering you? This is a nice one to do. I did it with my daughter the other day. She didn't know I was walking her through it, but I asked her these questions. So I was like, what's bothering you? What's going on? She's like, oh, well, this girl wasn't very nice to me at the school. And, it just kind of made me sad. And I was like, oh, did you do anything or, what happened? And she was like, no, she was just being rude. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, did anybody else like contribute or say anything around you? She's like, no. And I was like, oh, well, okay, well, did you have control of the situation? And she's like, I didn't have control over her saying those mean things. And I was like, no, but did you have control over yourself? Like, how did you respond? And she's like, well, I just ignored her and walked away. And then, I was like, well, what didn't you have control over? And she's like, well, I didn't have control over her telling me, those mean things. And then what past events happened that led up to the situation? I was like, well, has she said these mean things to you before, or have you interacted with her before? And she's like, no. So you can reframe each of these questions to kind of dive into the situation a little bit more. And then we radically accepted the moment, that she felt sad, but then she could move through it, and it wasn't worth wasting her energy on that person, to have her fill her energy with that person. She was taken away from her energy. So it's good to talk about energy. A lot of people still think that's a woohoo thing, but you can just be like, hey, did you know your heart is energy? It's like literally shocks your heart to keep beating. Like, hello, SA node, right? So turning the mind is the next one. And this is just like an everyday radical acceptance. Um, so these are kind of some cool statements. So you can either go one or two ways, right? You can go into rejection of the present moment, or you can go into acceptance. So you can observe that you are not accepting. You can look for what you're avoiding. You can also make an inner commitment to just accept the present moment. You can do it again over and over and then develop a plan for next time. So if it should happen in the future, you can be like, all right, yeah, this moment happened before and I accepted it and everything was okay, right? And everything moved the way it should. Everyday radical acceptance. These statements are really cool, like accepting that someone cut you off while driving. It happens. And why should you give energy to that person just because they have to poop really bad? Accepting that someone cuts you in a line at the grocery store, right? Accepting that you're speaking to someone who talks over you, or accepting that you're halfway to your destination and forgot something. Like these are just things that happen, like that we should just not give energy to. We should just accept the reality because it's all happening for like beyond our thought process. Like everything is happening for our best. And so if you get diverted, it's usually for a good reason that is unbeknown to you. Right. So that's radical acceptance. And last but not least, before I ask if there's any questions, acceptance mindset. This is just a really pretty picture. You can print it out, post it. Acceptance mindset is, it shouldn't be this way. It is what it is. I love that statement. What if I fail? I can't predict the future. Oh, I hate the rain. It's raining, right? So, like trying to take out some of this judgment that we so often do in putting into statements, because that's going to kind of divert our day. If I'm like, oh, I hate the rain, this day's going to suck. Yeah, probably it's going to fucking suck. And it's probably going to rain all day on your ass because you are now in that mindset of low, low, low. But if I'm like, walk outside, I'm like, oh, it's raining. cool, and just go about your day, then your day is going to be what you make it. And I see this a lot, especially I'm not a weather person. Like I will do whatever. I don't look ahead to the weather because I'm not going to plan around the weather. I'm just going to be wherever I need to go. So the weather situation is really interesting. So if you are a weather person, just try for a week to not check the weather and see if your week's any different. You might do things that you might have not done if you knew that it was about to rain. And that's just an estimate anyway. Sometimes they don't even know what the weather is. All right. Any questions so far with these skills? We're almost coming to the end of the book here. All right. Okay, so signs of a crisis. We've talked a little bit about this before, especially in relation to body cues. You can really start to see when somebody's in a crisis. And an example just came to my mind when I was working at a mental health facility. I remember this patient was a little bit agitated. He had a little bit more increased vigor and he was kind of pacing around the room. And as you know, if you've been in a mental health facility, there's usually like just kind of a big room where everybody eats, everybody is. They're kind of like caged animals. They're stuck in a room for much of the time, and then they have their own rooms that they go into. But there isn't a lot of movement beyond four walls a lot of the time. So a lot of the energy just keeps collecting. So this gentleman just kept walking around the room, and the pace wasn't that fast. So I was just observing, and I noticed a nurse go up to him and she's like, "Oh yeah, it looks like you're walking really fast." Well, she hadn't been observing him the whole time like I had. So I knew where what was happening. So he was actually building momentum at this time. He was already feeling really agitated, and that's a heightened nervous system response. So going into that, what do you think the best way is in kind of disengaging that nervous system. Because this lady went ahead and approached him and started to be like, "Yeah, let's walk faster." And I'm like, and so what do you think would be a good way to kind of disengage that person to help his nervous system become more regulated?
Oh, I'm clicking the wrong buttons. So I think that sometimes, I mean, depending on the person and, the exact situation, kind of walking with them or trying to do some kind of, distraction or, approach them and not really call that part out, but
Yeah.
kind of be a little slower energy yourself, a little lower and, um, not be as amped up as they are in the current situation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Slowing down your own energy is like huge. Um, and just kind of not matching their energy. I think a lot of times we do want to match energy, but it's just being aware of like what kind of energy is that? Is it an agitated energy? Is it excited energy? And to kind of diffuse that. So yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jenny. I appreciate that. All right. So this is a SUDS thermometer. And this is just looking at how stressed somebody is. And you might have seen these in nursing. They're a little bit different in the mental health facilities, but it kind of goes more into how is the person feeling for that day. So if you're the highest, you're probably in a fear state. You might even be in like a shock state at this point. And then we kind of go down, you're totally relaxed. So this is just a nice way to start out clients like, "Hey, we're on the suds today. Are you at? What are you noticing?" And then you can kind of help them navigate from there. Kind of helps you guide your sessions as well. Behavioral chain analysis. Again, we talked about this, I think in the second or third session, and it's literally walking you through why a behavior happened. And you can go through this a bunch of different ways. But just again, make sure you're understanding. And I always have clients or patients understand like you're vulnerable in certain ways. So the way you might react or respond to experiences or situation, much of the time is going to be based on your vulnerability at the time of the incident that occurs, whether you respond or react. So a lot of pieces and parts can be filled in here. You don't have to go in order. So if you look here, we have, it goes prompting event, trigger, thought, target, short term, long, and then down here. So what I usually do is I ask the person, like, what happened? Like, just tell me what happened. Okay. And so the what happened would be the prompting event. So let's say, um, this guy, his wife left him. So the prompting event would be, wife walked out at 12 p.m. last night. The trigger thought, or the trigger emotion. So that emotion made him feel angry and sad and abandoned. And then the trigger thought was, is she leaving me for good? Target behavior, I want to change. The target behavior might be like, well, I want my wife back. That's the target behavior. But the target behavior might be to change the thought process if this is a recurring thing. So the target behavior might be, instead of running to this person and frantically calling this person over and over and texting this person to be like, come back, I need you, to what I want to change is I don't want to be doing that because that's a reaction. That's a reaction, right? I want to respond. So instead of texting, right, the short term relief that I get from texting and calling is that I feel that I can control the situation. But the long term consequences is I might push that person further away because I'm like coming from a place of needy or abandonment attachment kind of style, right? Vulnerability factors might be, they were fighting previously, their marriage has been on the rocks for a little while, um, the husband had just lost his job. Preventative strategy from this occurring, we went into a whole multitude of things, from like him looking for another job, to them going into marriage counseling. There's a bunch of different things you can add. And then that kind of segued into solution and repairs and gave him a little bit of an action plan of where he needed to do. Um, and ultimately, they were able to repair their relationship. They both went through this with me together. It was really cool. Um, and then they used the book and they were able to really focus on interpersonal effectiveness, is what we really focused on, for them to both understand like how to ask for what they wanted without coming across like being insensitive or being aggressive, right? Because usually that happens, one of those two things. All right, so that's the behavioral chain analysis worksheet. This is a good one for kids too, because it'd be like, all right, little Johnny, let's look at your behavior here. I mean, really, they should use this for detention, but I digress. All right, creating your own coping toolbox. This is another fun thing to do. You can even form a retreat around this as well. But a toolbox is basically like put all your things in a box, and every time you feel dysregulated or need some time to yourself, you can go to this place and just decompress. So I have these kind of all over my house. I have like little nooks, or you can make a basket. So like you can go to a store and just get like a basket or a tote and just add a bunch of different things. So for example, like I have these massage balls like kind of all over my house. I have these and lacrosse balls. This is a little bit bigger. These are really good for myofascial release, so you should probably get yourself one. Yeah, it's weird. They're two different sizes. Um, these are my balls, and they're great for myofascial release. So you can roll them on your feet, which is great for plantar fasciitis too. So look out in the future. I'll be doing Modern Nurse Fest actually in Alaska. We're going to be doing a myofascial release. I think I'm going to guide it. So it's going to be a good time. So that is in the future works as well. So it can be that, it can be incense, it can be like fun little, these are like I create my reality. They're just fun little cards that you can do. I also have just like weird stuff like this, which is like a little pen, little clicker guy. So, just like sticking fun things around your house can help you kind of become more regulated with the dysregulated emotions. Strength from trauma. So this is for anybody that's had a trauma experience. It's to kind of find um, like the glimmers within the trauma, although that sounds really weird, but there is always glimmers within really painful situations. So these are just appreciating the strengths that you have developed as a result of your trauma. So this is really trying to help somebody tell a new story, because our trauma story, if we keep telling it over and over, we're just going to keep staying in that same frequency and that same trauma. And your body's going to keep feeling that same trauma over and over and over. And it's not until you tell yourself a new story of what you went through that you can kind of come through that and then feel new emotions of the trauma you've experienced. So that's a really cool way to coach people as well. Pros and cons, obviously, we know what that is. Hopefully, we do that in life already. Safe space visualization, you can also draw it. This is a fun way to dive into inner child work. What does your safe space look like for you? Self-soothe with the five senses. So we're talking about vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, which are so important in helping regulate our nervous system. And then also these are the affirmations that I was speaking about earlier in our session today. So any of these are really nice to print out for people, or you can also take to ChatGTP if you have a person that is needing some of this specifically. You can make ones for fear, you can make ones for belonging, you can make ones for whatever they're dealing with. You can plug that into Chat GPT as well. And last but not least, we have emotional regulation, which I went through a little bit before. But basically, emotions in general, they communicate to others. They help us understand our own needs. They give us some information and they can also motivate us. And, what makes regulating emotions hard? I love this because it takes practice, which is reinforcement. It might just be a lack of skills. Like many people don't even know about their own bodies, but they've lived in their body for so many years. And, our vulnerability, or our own biology can make emotions hard. This is an emotion list. So many emotions. Like, are you feeling powerful? Are you feeling brave, determined, or daring? Are you feeling surprised? Are you feeling any body sensations? So these are really nice too if you have a client that's starting to get in touch with themselves, with their sensations. You can be like, hey, are you feeling any of these today? Are you feeling bubbly or rigid or pricky? Are you feeling prickly or stiffness or suffocated or tense or wobbly? And then it dives into the emotional wheel that we talked about. Myth about emotions, that's another good worksheet. So it's like painful emotions should be ignored. And then kind of the rewrite would be like, um, painful emotions are there to help me move through hard experiences or something like that. Model for describing emotions. We went through this last week with the please. Opposite action, we talked about this as well. Accumulating positives. Building mastery is just doing something you're good at. Just doing something you're good at and allowing yourself to be really good at it and then doing something that you're not good at. And that confidence with the previous mastery will help you then engage in that new situation that you don't feel very confident at. This is really good for kids. And it's really good for nursing students as well, especially like before clinicals, just doing a clinical um, task that you already know how to do, like just taking a blood pressure on somebody and being like, oh my God, yeah, it's 120/80, and then going and inserting an IV like right after can really just help with that confidence. Cope ahead of time. This is a beautiful way as well, not only for nursing students, but for nurses, for everybody, for all humans, because it's allowing you to vision what you want to happen. And most of the time, that will happen. So maybe a boss needs to speak to you about something and you're really nervous. You're like, oh my God, the boss called me into the office. I don't even know what this is about. I'm really nervous. You can cope ahead of time. You can be like, I don't know what this meeting's about, but everything is happening for my highest good. And I'm just going to take a moment to picture me walking in, sitting down, being very easily relaxed, noticing my boss, concerned, right? So, like, whatever you want to picture, you can in that visualization. Any questions so far? Any skills so far that you've used before, Jenny, in your practice or just like with yourself?
Um, Something like the creating your own toolbox. I like that because I haven't done that in terms of like each of the five senses. I keep wanting to say sentences. But when you said that, I was like, that's like, I encourage people to get a happy basket and
Oh,
to put things, some of them are things like that, but also like, a magazine or a devotional or cards to send somebody, a crossword, coloring book, so a lot of those same kind of things that are in there, but it's something where where you've easily got it accessible and you're able to do those things that you enjoy without having to think, oh, well, I don't want to, I don't know where this is at and I don't want to go get it. And but I'm actually getting ready we're kind of putting together a well-being program for mental health, substance use treatment
oh
facility for the
wow.
staff there. And I love the thought of like, because we want to, like, some of the funding I think that we're going to be able to get is going to be for like tangible things for them
Yeah.
to do. And, not just, okay, just listen to me talk about it, but, like really practical things and being able to, to have them pick these things, like have a variety of these things available and then be
Yeah.
able to, stock their own toolbox with them, I think is really exciting. And then the building mastery that kind of ties into, I also encourage my clients to keep a wins file.
Mm.
And so the things, when they know that they've done something right, or they get, maybe an attaboy from somebody or a new certificate or an A on a test, whatever, and to have those things there because we all have those times when we're feeling really, really insecure and like, I don't think I can do this. And being able to look back and see, hey, I've done all of these things and these people said these kind of things about me. I mean, and I do that with like texts that people send and stuff
Mhm.
and keep those because, then if you're going in for an interview or if you're just having kind of a bad day or whatever, you can kind of review those ahead of time and pump yourself up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that happy basket and the wins file. It's so many good tips and tricks, Jenny, for sure. Yeah, the happy basket. That's so cute. Yeah, that's so amazing. Yeah, I think that's so important because there's so many different ways and that's what I love about nurses. We all bring our flavor or bring our bling. Yeah, we bring our bling. The next one is check the facts. And check the facts is literally checking the facts. Like we put so many fillers into sentences that are just not necessary. So checking the facts is just strictly saying what is currently happening in the situation. So I'm speaking to you right now. I'm wearing a dress and I'm standing here conveying a message, right? If I was like really judging myself, I could be like, I don't even want to be here. This dress looks horrible on me and I feel like crap today. So I'm just adding like none of that's true. None of that's actually factual except that I'm wearing a dress. Right. So it's like taking out of that fluff that we so often add that kind of brings us down a lot of times. So it's just checking the emotion or the emotions that you'd like to change. And then also assessing like, is it a threat? Is what I'm currently kind of up on a tizzy with? Like, is it an actual threat? Because most of the time it's not. All right. The next one is problem solving. So that just goes into check the facts, like how you're going to get through this problem. Vitals to success. This kind of goes with the win file, right? Like validate your feelings. What's your goal at first at the top? You got to validate your feelings. You're going to applaud yourself. You're going to imagine yourself doing it peacefully and productively. You're going to lighten the load. How are you going to do that? Maybe you're going to delegate some tasks to somebody else or get help or support. You're going to take small steps or action plan to break down the project into bite-sized pieces. So it even gives you like, hey, list out the steps and then sweeten the pot, describe. So add something that you're going to do after, during, as a reward to keep you going. And it might be looking at that win file that you're gonna go ahead and start with. So the interpersonal effectiveness, this again is going into more of the relationship. So I'm going to actually move this piece into next week because next week we're going to be doing a couple role plays and we're going to dive into kind of looking more at this from a perception of communication. But before we end, I do want you guys all to go through identifying your values. This is the number one thing we should have nursing students do in nursing school is like identify your values. Because I know so many students that are so excited and they're only shown really kind of bedside options and they're asked, where do you want to work? And even before coming into nursing school, one of them was like, I want to be a NICU nurse so bad. I want to go work with tiny little babies and I just want to do that so bad. And I was like, yes, but here's the reality. It's not what you see on TV. And they were like, oh. And I was like, so let's start with your values first to see what that looks like. And you can add more values to this, right? So, like meaningful work. Obviously, all nurses are probably going to be like, yes, that is a value that I have. Well, obviously, you're a nurse. Customer service. We have patients, those are our customers. You want to be around people that have wisdom, or you want to feel that your wisdom can be shed upon people. You want to be healthy, you want stability, right? Like go through these values. And some of these blank ones down here, you might want to be like, I want to be outside more than I want to be inside. That might be another thing, right? So kind of think outside of the box, going through these values, and then you're going to write down your top 6 values and notice if it currently aligns with your current job. It's kind of a cool thing to do. Sometimes it does, which is really great. And that's like you're at a good place. If it doesn't, see how you can bring those values into your current job. Maybe you just need to move around. Maybe you just need to move around to a different floor, different specialty. But usually we can infuse our values into our current job. Now, if they don't align up for you and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Then that's a really good indication that your values aren't lining up. So your body is currently being affected. So every time we don't respect our own values or boundaries, we are kind of causing ourself like self pain or self suffering, right? Because we have to deal with the consequences. So go through the values assessment. You can even write them down here. I know I've gone through this a couple sessions ago, but I just want to remind people if they haven't done that yet. Look through your legitimate rights. This is something else that you can bust out with a client and be like, hey, like this is our first session together. Like, hey, I just want you to know that these are your rights, not only as a person, but as my client. And you can kind of go through these as well. It sets up a safe space for them to understand and trust you as a person. I mean, nurses are already the number one most trusted profession, but a lot of people don't understand that we also do coaching. We also are mentors. We also are all these other things. So they might have a little bit more of a limited mindset when working with you. Our human needs, these are all needs that we have. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy. So remember that Maslow's back in the day, right? That guy is still around and he's kind of in throughout DBT. So look at that as well. Dearman is another skill. And again, I'm going to go through some of these next week. The validation we've talked about. This is really good. How to intensely ask or say no to say no. A lot of people need that in their life. We've talked about feelings and unmet needs, and then it goes into boundaries. So we're going to talk about boundaries next week as well. All right, before we close out, any questions? All right, so we're just going to go ahead and add just 3 things that you're grateful for. So I just want you to take a moment and we're going to write those 3 things down. So if you're watching this recording, go ahead and just pause. And I want you to go ahead and write 3 things down that you're grateful for. All right. And when you're done doing that, that's something just to, do every day, at the end of the day, kind of like list your wins. What are your wins for the day? And what didn't go so well, and how can you maybe change that up next time, right? So it's just a good way to like connect in with yourself, not only what you're grateful for. I like to end calls with 3 things that you're grateful for with every person, usually. So, start doing that with clients. You can even do it with family members. Be like, hey, what are three things you're grateful for? And then share three things you're grateful for. And then that person's going to be like asking other people, like, what are you grateful for? Right. It's like the cute little trickling effect that I think is so important that we do as nurses every single day. So, all right, y'all, have a super great day. And I'll see y'all next week. We have a couple guest speakers coming up. We had Karen on yesterday. I'll put that recording in as well so you can watch that. She was amazing. She talked about rest and how to rest more and come from a place of rest rather than a place of reaction. So that's a really good one to watch. And I'll see y'all next week. Have a good weekend, and we'll catch up soon. Thanks so much. Bye. Bye, Jenny.